My desk mate is the most popular girl in school. Every day someone tries to win her over. The class heartthrob, the grade's most handsome, the campus king. All sorts of good-looking guys swarmed her, but my silent and gloomy desk mate, Clarissa, was as cold and beautiful as a distant star. She'd spit a single icy word at them, scram, full of heartless annoyance. Then she'd turn and hide in my arms, her dark expression tinged with a pleading. Don't fall for anyone else, okay? And me, I'm just an average Joe, an ordinary family, an ordinary IQ, and looks that were passable but not handsome. My life was a straight line between school, the road, and home. My days were perfectly normal, one following the other in a predictable rhythm. That is until I noticed something was not normal at all. It all started in my sophomore year of high school, when the teacher assigned me a new desk mate. Her name was Clarissa, the top student in our grade and a goddess-level beauty. She was silent and melancholic, radiating a world-weary, don't-come-near-me vibe. But you couldn't argue with her looks or her grades. She was still the object of many boys' affections except for me. I had no interest, no feelings for her. My first love was the sunny, athletic, and cheerful beauty from the class next door. That was precisely why the teacher made Clarissa my desk mate. Why not a girl? Because she seemed to have a severe aversion to being touched. The slightest contact from someone else felt like it would make her lose a piece of her flesh, and her face would instantly darken. She was a loner who didn't interact with anyone, and the other girls all said they didn't want to sit with her. As for the boys, almost all of them had ulterior motives, and so I became the perfect candidate to be Clarissa's desk mate. Our days as desk mates passed peacefully, like two separate wells, neither drawing from the other. No talking, no greetings. A stack of textbooks formed a wall down the middle of our desk, and our lives rarely intersected. Despite her bad temper, new love letters would appear on her desk every morning. She always stuffed them into her backpack. At first she'd throw them in the trash, but someone would fish them out and read them aloud. So afterward, she just collected them in her bag, I figured. She took them home for a mass destruction ceremony. Clarissa never lacked for admirers, but recently I noticed something strange. Every so often a new guy would relentlessly try to get her attention, and every time after failing, he would seem to become a completely different person. His personality would change entirely with this weird feeling. I watched him like a bystander. Clarissa, I don't get this math problem. Can you teach me? The speaker was our class heartthrob, who looked like one of those puppetagide boys popular online. He stood beside Clarissa, his textbook placed on her desk, a hint of shyness in his demeanor. Clarissa coolly lifted her eyes and said flatly, I don't know how. That was a blatant lie. She always got a perfect score in math. I'd never seen that number change. A smile on the heartthrob's face froze for a second. Oh, okay then. I watched him maintain his smile and tactfully walk away. From the look in his eyes, I guessed he wouldn't give up so easily. Sure enough, during gym class that afternoon, I saw him offering a bottle of water to Clarissa, who was resting in the shade of a tree. Clarissa, you must be thirsty. Have some water. I'm not thirsty. Clarissa rejected him and picked up her own water bottle, twisting the cap and taking a drink. I saw the heartthrob secretly clench his fists. It's fine. I'll just leave it here. You can drink it when you want to, he said. Keeping up his polite smile as he walked away, a cool breeze rustled. Under the tree, lifting the bangs from Clarissa's forehead and revealing her exquisitely carved features, at an age that should have been bright and full of life, her eyes were stained with a deep, lifeless darkness. She suddenly turned and her gaze met mine. I nonchalantly looked away, staring blankly at the clouds in the sky. At the end of gym class, as we were lining up to be dismissed, the class heartthrob let out a cry and stumbled forward. Clarissa was right in front of him, but he had underestimated her indifference. Clarissa simply took a step to the side, watching him fall flat on the ground. Her hands hanging by her sides didn't even show a flicker of a reflex to help. The fake fall turned into a real one, and the heartthrob howled in pain. Clarissa looked down at him, a slight curl on her lips, a sneer for a clown. The next day, the heartthrob quieted down. He went back to his old self, no longer hovering around Clarissa. The teacher droned on at the front of the class while the girl beside me scribbled formulas I couldn't understand on a piece of paper. They were dense, cryptic. I noticed that when she was writing these formulas, her entire aura would change. A rare light would shine in her eyes. Today was the day the monthly exam results were released, and the entire grade was buzzing. Clarissa, who had long held the top spot, had met her match. There were two first-place winners. Next to Clarissa's name on the ranking board was a boy's name. He was a dark horse who had stunned everyone. The students in the classroom whispered, all discussing this new academic star. Clarissa sat at her desk unfazed. I looked at the math test in front of me, which had just been explained, a barely passing grade. I sighed silently. My sigh drew Clarissa's attention. Her gaze fell on my score. There was no disdain, no smugness, just a calm look, but I still quietly flipped my test over. I really envied the perfect score on her paper. The gap between people was just too wide. During the break, as we were returning from morning exercises, a boy stopped Clarissa. He had a handsome, chiseled face, so good-looking it was almost unreal. You're Clarissa? I'm the other first place from this month's exam. I'm telling you, next time my name will be above yours. The boy arrogantly declared war on Clarissa. Clarissa stared into his eyes. Just when I thought she was impressed by his looks, a flash of impatience crossed her face. Without even a single word in reply, she ignored him and walked up the stairs. The boy's face flushed red in front of all the onlookers. He shouted at her, retreating back. Clarissa, don't you look down on me. I will beat you. After that, the boy always coincidentally ran into Clarissa. Each time he would look at her with that same arrogant expression, his words filled with a stubborn, motivational spirit. I will definitely crush you. He was trying to provoke her, but Clarissa didn't take the bait. During the second monthly exam, everyone was full of anticipation, waiting to see how the boy would crush Clarissa, but what stunned everyone was that Clarissa was still number one. A perfect score in every subject. She even got a perfect score on her essay. The boy was second. After the results came out, the boy said to Clarissa, you just got lucky with a perfect score on the essay. I won't give up. You just wait. After he said this, Clarissa, who had never bothered to reply to him, finally spoke. So annoying. What you want to do is none of my damn business. Just noisy. Clarissa's eyes were dark, her tone cold and sharp. The boy froze, his face contorting with anger. The boy went quiet and didn't show up again. I was a little curious who the next guy to try his luck would be. Several more boys came after that, each using a different method to get close to Clarissa. Without exception, none of them caught her attention and were all met with the same word, scramble. Among these handsome boys, one stood out to me, a transfer student named Leo, who was as elegant as the moon among the clouds. Unlike the others, he didn't immediately try to get in Clarissa's face. For the first week, he did nothing, but I knew he was waiting for the right moment, because on the first day during his self-introduction, his gaze had lingered on Clarissa for several seconds. The day it was I and Clarissa's turn for cleaning duty, a female classmate carelessly took a chocolate stick from Clarissa's desk. Some boy had given it to her, and she hadn't touched it, just left it on her desk. At the time that classmate asked Clarissa, Clarissa, another boy gave you a snack, huh? Are you going to eat it? Clarissa was wiping the blackboard and didn't even turn her head, saying faintly, no. The next second, the classmate opened the package. I'm so hungry. If you're not eating it, I will. Clarissa turned around and saw the other girl putting the chocolate in her mouth. Her eyes instantly darkened. She raised her hand, and the blackboard eraser in it flew, accurately hitting the classmate and sending a cloud of chalk dust into the air. Are you crazy? I said I wasn't eating it, but I never said you could. Then the two of them started fighting. The next day, they were interrogated by our homeroom teacher. The female classmate insisted that Clarissa started it and never mentioned the chocolate. The teacher told Clarissa to apologize, but she refused with silence. So the teacher pulled out the one-sentence student's fear. I'm calling your parents. Clarissa's fists clenched instantly. I could feel her anger. I didn't understand why she didn't just tell them about the chocolate. Girls were really strange. I thought about it. We were desk mates after all. I should help her out this once. Just as I was about to raise my hand, Leo abruptly stood up. Teacher, Clarissa wasn't in the wrong. He recounted what had happened the day before, clearing Clarissa's name. I looked at him, finding it very interesting. So this was what he was waiting for. Half a month later, Leo was leaving the school. He had failed. I was surprised. I didn't know what had happened. During that time I had seen him and Clarissa eating at the same table in the cafeteria, and thought he was special. That day on my way home from school, I saw him turn into an alley. I remembered it was a dead end, I was waiting for a street vendor to make me a wrap. After the wrap was done and I had finished eating it, I still hadn't seen him come out. I hesitated for a moment, then walked towards the alley. It went straight with a fork to the left at the corner. I saw Leo with his back to me, talking to an empty wall. He had shed his usual gentle demeanor and was cursing. Damn it. I put on that act for so long, and it was completely useless. Does she have some hidden mind-reading ability? She actually came over to me while I was eating and said she could tell I was just like all the others. Approaching her with a motive, she saw right through me. I was so careful. I read so many salvation-themed novels before I came here, studied so many failed cases from my predecessors. Still didn't work. This protagonist's mission difficulty is SSSS level. System, I can't do this. I hit at the corner, stunned by what I was hearing. Protagonist, mission, system. A clear line formed in my mind. I felt like I was on the verge of understanding something. I slowly walked out of the alley. Under the evening clouds, a familiar figure appeared in my line of sight. The girl wearing a white cap walked along the main road ahead. The striking scrape and trace of blood on the corner of her cold, pale lips was particularly noticeable. She suddenly turned her head and looked over, her eyes dark and gloomy. I looked at Clarissa, my expression indifferent. We were like strangers. After a brief exchange of glances, we went our separate ways. Leo's words kept replaying in my mind as I walked home. A small smile played on my lips. How interesting. A large orange cat was perched on a banyan tree by the road, its eyes fixed on my back, but I didn't notice. The next day, Leo said his goodbyes to the class. As he walked down from the podium and past Clarissa's desk, his face showed a hint of unwillingness and helplessness. The cut by Clarissa's mouth had healed a bit, but you could still tell it was an injury. Leo wanted to try one last time. He placed a bandage on Clarissa's desk. I was puzzled. Does putting a bandage on a wound that isn't bleeding make it look better? I shook my head. Clarissa picked up the textbook the bandage was on, gave it a shake, and the bandage fluttered to the floor. Leo's face twisted in anger, and he stomped back to his seat. During the break, I took the initiative to go over to Leo and placed a cheese-filled pastry on his desk. A farewell gift for you. He was stunned for a moment, then hesitated. Your name is? I'm Alex. You're Clarissa's desk mate. Thanks for the gift. I smiled, not surprised that he didn't know me. I had a very low presence in this class and had always maintained a low-profile persona. Let's have dinner together after school. What? He seemed unable to process my sudden friendliness. I'll wait for you after school. We'll leave together. After I said that, the bell for the next class rang. I didn't give Leo a chance to refuse and turned to go back to my seat. This class, the language teacher's throat was sore, so she handed out a test for us to do in class. Halfway through the test, Clarissa next to me was searching for something. I heard the slightly dry, forceful sound of a pen tip scratching on paper. I glanced over and saw my desk mate suppressing her frustration. I took a box of pen refills from my backpack. My fingers were about to reach into the box when I remembered her severe aversion to being touched. I paused, my hand under the desk, passed the box over, lightly touching her school uniform. Clarissa looked at me, was silent for a moment, then pulled out a refill. I heard a stiff, thank you. After school, I met Leo at a barbecue restaurant. He looked a bit dazed. This was the first time I had spoken to him in the half-month since he transferred, and I had immediately asked him out to eat. It was very surprising for him. You're so handsome and have a great personality. A lot of people in our class like you. I've always wanted to get to know you, but I didn't expect you to be transferring so soon. I just wanted to make sure I talked to you before you left. I hope you don't think I'm being intrusive. I explained my abruptness. After hearing my words, Leo relaxed. He was happy with my praise and started talking to me. Where are you from? Will we be able to see each other again? My family is from Summersea. Leo was eating happily when his expression suddenly changed. He covered his mouth. No. My family is from Chicago, but I'll probably be studying abroad in the future, so it might be hard to meet. That's a shame. I replied with a smile, taking in his chagrined expression. After dinner, Leo and I said our goodbyes and went our separate ways. The sky was already dark, but the streets were lively. It was a Friday, and there were many students coming and going. Across the street, I saw Clarissa in a nature-themed restaurant. She was wearing the restaurant's black uniform, carrying a tray and weaving through the crowd. I was confused. A germaphobe like her was working as a waitress? I watched for a while, and was about to leave when I saw 4 or 5 people storming towards the restaurant's entrance. Clarissa came out and was surrounded by the group, half pushed, half shoved towards an alley up ahead. I frowned and took out my phone to dial 911. Watching the figures disappear into the alley, I followed. The alley was deep, the darkness ahead like a giant beast ready to swallow someone whole. I had once seen Clarissa in a taekwondo gym wearing a red and black belt, so I figured a nerd like me wouldn't be needed for a heroic rescue. I didn't get any closer, only hearing the faint sounds of a fight. After a while, the police arrived and rushed into the alley. 5 minutes later, they brought out the people inside. Clarissa had injuries on her face, and the others were also bruised. From the way they walked, it seemed their injuries were quite serious. The crowd of onlookers grew larger. Clarissa kept her eyes downcast. The girl's tall, slender figures stood straight in the night amidst the whispers. But the darkness hidden in her eyes grew deeper. The others were taken away, and after being questioned for a bit, Clarissa was allowed to go back to the restaurant. I didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. When I got home, I looked up a place online, Tsundere. It didn't exist anywhere in the world. There was no such place. Leo's home, it seemed, was not in the same world as mine. In the night sky outside my window, a few stars twinkled faintly. I stared at them, lost in thought. The next morning, I found a pen refill on my desk, the same brand, the same plastic packaging. I knew it was from Clarissa. To be honest, I had intended the refill as a gift, but since she returned it, that was fine. The more polite we were, the more we could maintain a respectful distance. Leo was gone, but the number of people trying to win Clarissa's favor didn't decrease. As her desk mate, even I could feel the uncomfortable pressure of the frustration building up around her. Even as a quiet observer, I was inevitably bothered by people asking for my help or trying to get information from me. I was like a ball of cotton, soft and yielding, but I always bounced back their requests. It was just a bit annoying. The next class had a recitation quiz. I had been reading a classical text over and over, and my memorization was shaky at best. I tried to cram, knowing I'd have to copy it out if I failed. I looked over at the genius desk mate next to me with a bit of envy. Just as I turned my head, a boy in the aisle suddenly fell towards her desk. She pushed him with her hand, and he fell in the opposite direction. As Clarissa did this, she leaned back sharply. As I turned my head, a sharp pain shot through my nose. Her head had hit me. Clarissa turned to me, a look of shock on her face. Then I heard gasps from those around me, and saw her pupils suddenly constrict. A thick, warm liquid trickled over my lips, the taste of iron spreading across my tongue. I had a nosebleed. I grabbed some tissues from my bag to staunch the flow, shot up from my seat, and without even looking at the culprit, headed for the school nurse's office. In the nurse's office, I managed to stop the bleeding. A figure blocked the doorway. Clarissa stood there, silhouetted against the light. She walked in and paid for my medical expenses. I didn't politely refuse or say she didn't have to. I just silently watched her. I'm sorry. Clarissa stood in front of me. I was sitting, and upon hearing her words, I tilted my head up slightly. She had her head down. Her usually cold and indifferent features now held an apology, giving her a touch of humanity. It's fine. I nodded, accepting her apology. On the way back, we walked one behind the other. I glanced at the long shadow stretching out behind me. I didn't like the feeling of being followed, so I quickened my pace. As we passed the basketball court, Clarissa suddenly rushed forward and grabbed my arm. A ball flew past my face, narrowly missing me. A boy ran over to get the ball and apologized to me. The unfamiliar touch and force on my wrist made me look down. I looked at Clarissa's hand on my wrist and frowned slightly. She immediately let go, pursed her lips, and said, "Be careful." "Thanks." After I said that, I continued walking towards the classroom. As I passed the corner of the stairs, I wasn't surprised to see her heading towards the restroom. It made sense for someone so obsessed with cleanliness. She was probably scrubbing her hands raw in the restroom. Running water washed over her palm. The girl in the mirror looked down at the water flowing through her fingers, somewhat dazed. It was a while before Clarissa returned to the classroom. My nose still throbbed. But thankfully the recitation quiz was over, which was a relief. I struggled through the rest of the day until the final bell rang. As soon as it did, I grabbed my bag and left. At the intersection on my way home, the large orange cat was perched under the perpetually lush banyan tree. Its round head and large, bell-like eyes were staring right at me. I didn't know where this cat came from. It was plump and had a glossy coat, looking like a well-cared-for pet. I had been seeing it a lot lately. I don't know if it was my imagination, but I always felt like this cat was watching me whenever I saw it. Just like now, staring straight at me. I'm not much of a cat person, so I had no intention of going over to pet it. That night after my shower, I pushed open my bedroom door and was startled by the sight. At my window, a cat's head was poking through the window bars against the dark night. Our eyes met, and it was like something out of a horror movie. The cat saw me and jumped into my room. I took a moment to compose myself and walked towards it. It was the orange cat from the banyan tree at the intersection. I was a bit troubled, not knowing how to get it out. "Hello, Alex." Was I dreaming? I actually heard a cat speak. "I am a messenger of God, I.9. It introduced itself. The orange cat, I.9, told me a secret about this world and about Clarissa. Every world has a protagonist, and the protagonist is the core of the world. Their every move affects the world's operation, and in the world I was in, Clarissa was the protagonist, according to the original destiny. Clarissa was a genius girl with psychological issues due to her family background. She was world-weary, gloomy, and a loner. A protagonist like her living in darkness was supposed to meet a male lead as warm as the sun who would save her, soothe her emotional wounds, and they would live happily ever after, creating a perfect ending. But the trajectory of fate had changed drastically because of a transmigrator. The male lead was replaced by a transmigrator, but that person fell in love with a side character. He didn't follow the original destiny. In the end, the world collapsed. God tried to repair the world, but a problem arose. Clarissa never fell in love with the male lead. She grew up according to her destiny, created a new era, but then committed suicide at the peak of her success. The world collapsed again. God tried to repair it many times, but still couldn't change Clarissa's final choice to end her own life. The world, due to repeated collapses and reconstructions, began to warp. In the last world, God discovered that the male lead storyline had been snuffed out by Clarissa's will. The male lead no longer existed. So God came up with a plan to summon task takers from other worlds to transmigrate into this one. They would try to change her to replace the original male lead storyline. But because of the constant collapsing and reshaping of the world, Clarissa seemed to have a faintly awakened consciousness. She was very sensitive to outsiders, always able to see through their hidden motives, and was extremely guarded. Countless waves of task takers had failed and returned. The cat's mouth opened and closed. I listened silently. I was surprised but not shocked. Leo had already made me suspicious. "So why are you telling me all this?" I looked at the orange cat calling itself I.9 and interrupted it. It paused, seemingly puzzled by my unusually calm reaction. "Because we hope you'll help. Of course, secrets don't come for free." "I don't want to." I refused directly without a moment's hesitation. "You haven't even let me finish." I.9 waved its paws. I stood up, sat down at my desk, and opened a book, not wanting to deal with it. I.9 instantly jumped onto my desk. "It's but blocking the words in my book. If you don't help, this world will eventually disappear. After continuous cycles of collapse and reconstruction, this destructive force will also affect the safety of other worlds. Young man, you have to save the world. The world is counting on you." I looked at the cat fur that had fallen on my desk and said slowly, "Aren't you sending task takers?" "You saw them. Those task takers can't even get close to her." I.9, "Then what makes you think I can?" I.9 said it came to me because it discovered I also had a faint awakening. It knew I had discovered the secret. It had been observing me for a while and thought I was the perfect person for the job. There were a few reasons. 1. I was Clarissa's desk mate, giving me a geographical advantage. 2. Clarissa was more polite to me than to other boys. I wasn't an outsider, so she wouldn't suspect me, giving me a social advantage. As for the timing, I.9 said it would help me. The last point was that I was a marginal character, without even a clear independent destiny line, a so-called passerby. My changes wouldn't affect the world. I.9 tried hard to persuade me, laying out a series of grand plans. Its paw rested on my hand. Full of passion, I remained silent, unmoved. Clarissa was just a regular classmate to me. I didn't want to accept this mission, nor did I think I could. If she could erase the male lead, she could erase me too. Besides, salvation is a heavy word. To save others, one must first redeem oneself. I refused I.9's request, pestered me for a while, but eventually gave up in frustration. My life remained ordinary, a straight line between 3 points. The only ripples came from the contenders trying to win over my deskmate Clarissa. I was like a spectator, silently watching them, keeping the secret buried in my heart. My relationship with Clarissa remained the same, non-interfering and peacefully coexisting. This state continued until our senior year. We were still in the same class with our sophomore year homeroom teacher, and under his arrangement, Clarissa was my deskmate again. Our relationship didn't change much, continuing with that same polite distance, perhaps because the contenders were being refreshed too frequently. Things had been quiet around Clarissa lately. The heavy workload of senior year was a lot of pressure for an average student like me. I stumbled through my studies. Clarissa was treated like a national treasure by the teachers, who all assumed she had 1 foot in the door of a top university, just waiting for the final exams. Half a month before the final countdown, the school organized a graduation photo shoot. That day Clarissa didn't show up. No one could find her. In the end, we took the graduation photos as planned, but she was the only one missing. I didn't know why she wasn't there. When we were assigned to different exam rooms, she and I were placed in another school. On the day of the exam, I ran into Clarissa on the same bus. The bus was packed with 9 out of 10 people being students on their way to the exam. When I got on, the aisle was also crowded. Clarissa was sitting in the first seat at the front. When she saw me, her gaze fell on my bandaged ankle. I awkwardly touched my nose. I had sprained my ankle playing basketball a few days ago. Clarissa stood up and gave me her seat. I was actually a little surprised. She held on to a handrail and stood next to me. I looked up at her. Her downcast eyes met mine, then shifted to the window. The bus swayed. Moving forward, the sky outside was a bit gloomy, and soon it started to rain, blurring the windows. When we got to our stop, Clarissa didn't have an umbrella. She stepped out into the rain without hesitation. When I got on the bus, I was with a male friend who had an umbrella. I looked at her lonely figure in the bustling crowd, stared at the umbrella in my hand for a few seconds, and then limped after her. I held my umbrella over her head. She was a head shorter than me, and my body holding the umbrella shielded her. Clarissa stopped, her rain-kissed face looking up at me. The sound of hurried footsteps of other students rushing to the exam filled the air, and the raindrops became denser. In the small world under the umbrella, it felt as if time had stood still for us. She said nothing, but her eyes rippled with emotion. My own moment of silence was because I realized that deep down, a sliver of pity for her had surfaced. It was strange. I felt nothing when she was injured, and I wasn't particularly moved when I learned of her fated suicide. Yet in that moment, I was touched by the sight of her back. "Here for you. Good luck with your exams." I tossed the umbrella to her and turned to duck under my friend's umbrella. That umbrella was a thank you for giving me her seat. As I walked, I glanced back at her in the rain. The girl stood there holding a small blue umbrella with a dandelion print. In a moment, she was swallowed by the crowd. I looked away and headed towards the exam hall. At that time, I didn't know that this would be the last time I would see Clarissa in my youth. I never saw Clarissa when I went to get my diploma or fill out my college applications. She rarely interacted with others, so no one in our class knew what had happened to her. The homeroom teacher didn't reveal much either, only announcing with a joyful face that Clarissa was the top scorer in the province. The news was broadcasted throughout the school, and banners were hung high. Everyone cheered for her honor, but the protagonist herself was absent. Later, I heard that Clarissa went to a top university. As for me, I went to an ordinary one. We had completely lost touch. In my sophomore year of college, I saw people in our class group chat discussing her, saying she had gone to study abroad. This occasionally lively group didn't include every classmate. Like Clarissa, for example. I was in it, but I was just a silent fish in the water. I.9 had said she would create a new era and become a very powerful person. I was a little curious. What kind of era would that be? Life went on uneventfully. I continued to live the life of an ordinary person. The year I started my internship, a company called Unknown suddenly rose to prominence. They announced the birth of the world's first fully immersive virtual reality game. In just 2 or 3 years, this game called Etheria swept the globe, creating a new wave of technology, and its developer, Clarissa, became a household name. Reports labeled her with many titles, and the internet was filled with myths and adoration. With that came all sorts of gossip and insider revelations, pushing her family background into the public eye. I know her. She was the campus queen of our school. I was her classmate. She was a genius since she was a kid. Knowledge really does change the world. I heard her family was very poor, living in the poorest and dirtiest urban village. I was her neighbor. She had it rough. Her parents' relationship was bad, and her father was a scumbag. She used to work part-time jobs all the time while she was studying. They say her family was extremely poor, and her mother was the main source of income. In the age of advanced communication, a person's privacy is easily stripped away. For a time, discussions about Clarissa flooded all media platforms. Then a few days later, they quickly subsided and related information was suppressed. But none of this seemed to affect Clarissa herself. She still had countless ardent admirers. Point 9 had said Clarissa's family background was not good, but it didn't give me the specifics. This was the first time I had indirectly received information about her family. Although there was a lot of exaggeration online, it was probably not far from the truth. In my memory, she was always a loner, her eyes filled with a gloomy indifference. What she had actually been through, only she knew the pain of it. Occasionally, I would find myself staring at a calendar, lost in thought. I didn't know when Clarissa would end her life, or if this time would be different. Had a task taker succeeded? Would she not make that final resolute decision? Would we ever meet again in the future? In the hospital filled with the smell of disinfectant, I was leaving with my annual physical exam report. At the elevator, the red numbers changed. I waited for a while before an elevator finally arrived. The moment the elevator doors opened, I froze. Inside the cold metal box stood a woman in formal attire, her aura cool and aloof. Our eyes met. Her eyes were indifferent, but her familiar features. Even without the youthful immaturity, I recognized her. It was Clarissa. In the few seconds I was dazed. The elevator doors slowly closed. A slender, clean hand reached out and stopped the closing doors. The elevator doors opened again. I walked in, composing myself. I smiled faintly and greeted her. "Hello, Clarissa. Long time no see." She stared at me, her eyes showing a flicker of emotion. A 5-second silence filled the quiet air. Just when I thought she hadn't recognized me, she spoke. "Long time no see, Alex." She said my name, Alex, very slowly, as if she was reminiscing, contemplating. I nodded, and that was it. It seemed our relationship wasn't one for casual chit-chat. That single greeting felt like it had used up all the sentiment from our time as desk mates. The familiar silence wasn't awkward. 9 years had passed since we last saw each other. The young girl had become a mature woman with a powerful aura. I wondered if a task taker had succeeded. Now that she had achieved so much, would she still have thoughts of ending her life? My peripheral vision sized her up, but I was drawn to a silver ring on her finger. Was she married? The elevator doors opened, and we both walked out. I was about to say a polite goodbye, but Clarissa said something that surprised me. "You haven't played Etheria, have you?" I mulled over her words twice. She wasn't asking if I had. It was a statement of fact. Haven't played? How would she know? I don't really like games. I didn't question the meaning of her statement, and just made an excuse. I really hadn't played Etheria. Not that I wasn't curious, but it was too expensive. Even though fully immersive VR games had become widespread and technologically mature, a common part of many people's leisure time, they were still pricey and not affordable for everyone. I didn't usually play games, so my mild interest wasn't enough to make me shell out the cash. I'd rather buy a few more books. There were dedicated experience centers, but I had never been. But to be asked this by the creator herself? Clarissa looked at me, and for the first time I felt awkward in front of her. Fortunately, my phone rang, breaking the stagnant air. "My ride is here. I have to go." I answered the call and turned towards the main entrance. After getting in the car, I opened the window. Clarissa had also come out. She stood at the entrance, a black sedan parked in front of her. The moment our eyes met, the dust of youthful memories settled over time was stirred up by the wind. It floated and spun in the sea of my consciousness, the feeling of a long-awaited reunion. I only belatedly perceived it in that moment. After meeting Clarissa this time, I had a dream that night, in a room without lights. Clarissa stood on an empty terrace, looking up at the night sky. A moment later, the world collapsed and she fell from the height into a bottomless dark abyss. She closed her eyes, smiling. The next second, I opened my eyes. My vision was filled with the morning sunlight filtering through the window, casting a shadow on my desk. It was a dream. This seemed to be the first time I had dreamed of her, but the scene in the dream left me feeling a sense of oppression and sadness. I had a premonition that I would see Clarissa again. I just didn't expect it to be so soon. We met again 5 days later. She appeared in the library where I worked. She was wearing casual clothes and black sunglasses, appearing without warning by a bookshelf. I was holding a stack of books, putting them back one by one. I turned around, and she was standing right in front of me. The books slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. I stared at this unexpected visitor in shock. She bent down to help me pick up the books. Need help? What are you doing here? I was very surprised that Clarissa had come to find me. She said she had something to talk to me about. She helped me organize the bookshelves, and I didn't politely refuse. The library closed at 8:30 p.m., and it was already 8 o'clock. The library was quiet with only the sound of our breathing and the distinct smell of paper and ink in the air and the faint cool fragrance from her. Next to the library was a traditional-style tea house that sold Chinese pastries. We sat facing each other. After taking a sip of tea, I spoke. Did you need something from me? Clarissa had been carrying a brown paper bag which she now placed on a corner of the table. She gave it a push, sliding it towards me. Open it. I took it with a puzzled look and opened it. A familiar yet strange object lay inside, like a stone stirring the sea of my memories. A blue folding umbrella lay quietly inside. A blue knot I had tied to the handle was still there. This was the umbrella I gave her on the day of our final exams. I never thought she would have kept it all these years, just waiting to return it to me one day. I remembered the time I gave her a pen refill. She had returned that too, never owing anyone anything, not even for the smallest, most insignificant things, so sincere yet so distant. I'm returning the umbrella I borrowed back then. I had never intended to ask for the umbrella back, but there was no point in saying that now. It would be superfluous. I nodded and okay. Are you married? I changed the subject, probing. Had a contender succeeded? She followed my gaze to the silver ring on her index finger. She said faintly, No. This ring is the activation key for Etheria. I gave an awkward smile. Not only had I never played the groundbreaking game she developed, I didn't even know its basic accessories. The tea in my cup was empty. I picked up the teapot to refill it, and also refilled hers. The steam from the hot tea rose, mingling with the warm, dim light of the lantern above, dissipating some of Clarissa's usual cold aura. Her fingers holding the teacup twitched. Are you doing well? I raised an eyebrow. The question felt a bit out of place. Or perhaps it was just jarring coming from her. Pretty ordinary, but good, I said with a smile. She gave me a deep look, then picked up her teacup and drained it in one go. Maybe it was my imagination, or maybe it was the steam, but her eyes seemed to have a hint of moisture. We didn't have much to talk about. After returning the umbrella and drinking the tea, she stood up to leave. This area around the library became deserted at night, the darkness as thick as ink. Across the street was a bustling commercial district, its neon lights illuminating the night sky above, separated by a single street. It felt like two different, mismatched worlds, outside the tea house, under a streetlight. Clarissa's figure looked lonely and cold. In that instant, I felt a sense of temporal distortion. Her back overlapped with the image of her in the rain from our youth. The image of her death from my dream flashed in my mind. A wave of sour emotion swelled in my chest. I looked away and noticed she had left her sunglasses on the table. Clarissa, I called out to her. She stopped and turned to look at me. I ran up and handed her the sunglasses. I added, I forgot to say congratulations. I'll go try Etheria. 3 days later, I received a package. Inside were the Etheria helmet and ring. The return address was the unknown company. Obviously it was from Clarissa. I chuckled. It seemed my shabby appearance had been seen through. I thought I should thank her, but I realized I had no way to contact her. I followed the instructions in the manual and put on the Etheria gear. It was my first time entering the world of Etheria. It was like entering another parallel universe. Besides the electronic guide's voice in my head and the transparent screen in front of me, everything felt real. Etheria used a real name system for entry, but I skipped the registration process because there was already an account here, exclusively for me, Player 1. So that's why Clarissa had asked if I hadn't played Etheria. This account had never been used, not until this very second. In Etheria, I received 2 letters from Clarissa. The first was a birthday wish. The package with the Etheria set was her gift to me. The second letter was brief, about the umbrella. She had been waiting for me to log into Etheria, waiting to return it to me. She had planned everything, but she never expected that I had never once touched Etheria. I logged out of Etheria and looked it up online. A popular report about Clarissa caught my eye. Miss Clarissa, why is the Etheria logo a blue paper umbrella and falling dandelions? Is there a special meaning? It was just a source of inspiration. Many netizens speculate that it might be related to someone you love. The report's text described. Miss Clarissa was silent for a long time before slowly. I often think of him, and it makes my mood better. I don't know if that counts as love. I stared at those words, reading them over and over. My heart pounded. Clarissa liked me? How could that be? I stood up and looked at the scaly clouds outside the window, lost in thought. Meow. A cat's meow brought me back to my senses. I looked at the familiar orange cat on the lawn. It was I.9. I hadn't seen it in years. Why was it looking for me again? I was about to open the window to let it in. The moment my hand touched the glass, a sudden feeling of weightlessness swept over me, and I fell to the floor. Something was rapidly draining from my body. Instinctively, I felt the presence of death. In my blurred vision, I saw I.9 jump through the window and come towards me. As my consciousness faded, I heard I.9's voice. Damn it. I was a step too late. My 27th birthday was the day I died. The noise around me was deafening. My head was spinning. My blurry vision sharpened, and I saw a group of people surrounding me, their mouths moving incessantly. The moment my consciousness returned, my eyes met the figure of a girl standing on the running track outside the wall of people. Her sweat-soaked hair framed a face with dark eyes that stared straight at me, like a deep pool, her emotions unreadable. I tried to stand up, but a sharp pain in my knee hit my nerves with a half-second delay. I looked at my scraped and bleeding knee under my rolled-up pants, my slightly swollen ankle. I looked around, faces full of youthful energy, the gym teacher next to me directing students. Memories were flooding back. I remembered this was the 800-meter test in our senior year. I had fallen and injured myself while sprinting towards the finish line. I was reborn. Was this another reset of the world? But why this time I had memories of the previous world? Was this the awakening I.9 had talked about? I pulled down my pant leg and, with a classmate's help, walked to the nurse's office. As I went up the stairs to the field, I looked back at Clarissa, who was at the starting line preparing for her test. The whistle blew, and she shot off like an arrow, sprinting towards the finish line. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the cheers and admiration of the boys watching, bright and confident. For some reason, I felt a pang of sadness. Had she still chosen to commit suicide? After getting my wound treated, I went back to the classroom to rest. I sat at my desk and looked around. I glanced at the class schedule taped to my desk. The next period was a study hall. The mountain of books piled on my desk made me rub my forehead. It was a headache. Why did I have to go through senior year again? This nightmare had to be experienced a second time. I rested my face in my hands, staring blankly at the writing the teacher had left on the blackboard from the last class. The memory of my death in the previous world was still fresh. Was this the fate of a background character? I.9 had said that background characters don't have clear independent destiny lines, so even death was random and unannounced. Even with a clean bill of health every year, I was still destined to be erased by the world when my time was up. The silver lining was that it wasn't painful, more like an exhausted person falling into a deep sleep. But why did I.9 suddenly seek me out again? What did its last words mean? I sat in the classroom for half an hour before the bell rang and students started trickling back in. Clarissa came in just as the bell for the next class was ringing. She walked to the seat next to me and sat down. Seeing her again, my feelings were complicated. In the last life, the memory of my final moments was too clear. It would be a lie to say my heart was completely unmoved. I didn't understand. How could she, surrounded by handsome guys, have feelings for someone as ordinary and unremarkable as me? When school ended, I didn't get up to leave right away. I stayed in the classroom until the students on cleaning duty were about to leave. Then I slowly packed my things. My leg was injured, so I walked a bit slowly and with a limp. I didn't like being stared at, so I chose to leave when there were fewer people around. After going down the stairs, I hadn't walked far when a bicycle blocked my path. A bright, smiling face appeared in my line of sight. It was Diana, the beauty from the class next door. What happened to your leg? I can give you a ride home. Diana and I lived in the same neighborhood and had known each other since we were little, though we weren't very close. From kindergarten to high school, we had been classmates 2 or 3 times. She was lively and pretty, the type I admired, but I had never thought about confessing to her, nor had I ever considered pursuing her. My feelings for her were more like a fan's admiration for an idol. I stared at her back seat, about to nod when another bicycle rushed over from the side. A sharp break, a long leg hitting the ground, the wheel stopping right in front of Diana's bike. The eyes under a white baseball cap looked at me. Get on. I'll take you home. I stared in shock at the suddenly appeared Clarissa, surprised by her actions. Diana smiled awkwardly and said, "Oh, someone was waiting for you. I'll go then." And she rode off on her bike, leaving me completely baffled. In this life, was my relationship with my desk mate Clarissa this close? I ended up getting on the back of Clarissa's bicycle. The pedestrians on the road moved slowly and the sky darkened quickly. The street lights along the way lit up one after another. The wind billowed her open school jacket, and it kept brushing against my face. The smell of laundry detergent. I looked at Clarissa's back, and my mind flashed to the image of her back in the rain and her shadow under the lamp outside the tea house. A faint sour feeling swirled in my chest. You were already at the pinnacle. You had everything. Why did you still choose to end your life? When we reached my neighborhood, I got off the bike and said thank you to Clarissa. Alex, you? She wanted to say something but stopped. She changed the subject. See you tomorrow. I frowned, studying the person in front of me. The brim of her hat cast a shadow over her face, but her eyes were very bright. The Clarissa I knew had never looked at me with such eyes, with that kind of serious focus. Too many things had happened today, and I needed to sort them out. I replied, "Yeah, see you tomorrow." After saying that, I turned to leave, but I felt an awkwardness from being watched. I looked back. Clarissa hadn't left. She was watching me. Seeing me turn back, she pulled her hat down, turned her bike around, and quickly disappeared from my sight. In this life, I hadn't seen any contenders, nor had I seen I.9. The banyan tree at the intersection on my way home was still lush and green, but I never saw that orange shadow again. Would I.9 appear again? I had so many questions in my mind, but I.9, the one who could answer them, was nowhere to be found. Clarissa was a bit different. That world-weary, melancholic aura had changed. Before, she was like a lifeless tree scorched by the sun, covered in dry cracks. Now she was like a deep pool of water, its depths unknown, impossible to see through. Clarissa's attitude towards me had also changed. Just now it was my turn to clean the blackboard, but she went up and wiped it for me. I reminded her, "I'm on cleaning duty today. Your turn is tomorrow. Your leg isn't healed yet. I'll help you," she replied naturally. Frankly, I couldn't help but wonder again. Does the personality and relationship of the characters change slightly with each world reset? The Clarissa of this life didn't seem as unapproachable as before. Clarissa took a book out of her backpack, and a folded piece of white paper fell out from between the cover and the pages. From her slightly stunned expression, I guess some boy had secretly put it there. The paper landed at my feet. I bent down slightly to pick it up. Just as I picked up the paper, Clarissa snatched it away with lightning speed. Her expression was a little unnatural. I didn't say anything and went out to the hallway for some fresh air. The warm spring sun felt lazy on my skin. The sunlight was soft, not harsh. Just now I had seen it. The outline visible through the white paper was a portrait sketch. As I picked it up, a corner flipped over, revealing 3. Alex, my name. I thought of I.9's request, of the Clarissa from the previous world, of her answer in the interview. My heart felt heavy. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. I was always dreaming of Clarissa. The dreams were of her various deaths, and she was always smiling. I think I was starting to waver. Could I still be an indifferent bystander? But what could I do? How could I change her fate of suicide? Soon it was the day for the graduation photos. The teacher called the class to go out and line up. I saw Clarissa answer a phone call and walk away from the group. In the last life, she didn't come for the graduation photo. Was it because of this call? The school's entrance and exit were strictly controlled during class time. Students couldn't leave, so where would she go? I stood in the hallway, watching her walk towards the dense woods behind the school. What was Clarissa doing there? I heard the class president's urging and followed the group downstairs. When we got to the photo spot, while we were waiting, everyone was taking pictures of each other with their phones. I was distracted, constantly checking the time on my phone. Finally, I turned and ran towards the woods. At a corner, I bumped right into Clarissa. I caught her as she was about to fall. Then I quickly let go, a blush creeping up my ears. I was panting, and I saw the dean of students behind her, escorting a few students to the office. One of them was a notorious troublemaker in the school, a girl who didn't study and always caused trouble. "Are you okay?" I looked her over. She didn't seem to be hurt. "You knew I was here?" I nodded at Clarissa's question. "I saw you heading this way just now. It's almost time for the photo, and you hadn't come back, so I came to find you. As long as you're okay. It's almost time for the photo. Let's go." I had just turned around when Clarissa's voice drifted to me on the wind. "Why did you come looking for me?" "Why?" "Because I don't think I can turn a blind eye to your life, to your fate anymore." The wind blew from behind, lifting my hair and brushing it messily against my face. I said in a low voice, "I was worried about you." Back at the photo shoot, we made it just in time for our class's graduation picture. The teacher and class president were shouting and rushing us. I found an empty spot and filled it. Clarissa happened to be standing in front of me. Looking at the camera lens, a fragment of a memory suddenly flashed in my mind. In the last world, Clarissa was absent. The next day, I saw a new cut on her arm. That troublemaker. I remember she was later expelled. In this life, Clarissa left the group to meet that troublemaker, came back unharmed, and that person was caught by the dean of students. And her changes, her attitude towards me, all the fragmented information instantly combined into a single pointing clue. Could it be that Clarissa, like me, had also awakened her memories? The photographer took a few shots and then gave an okay sign. The teacher stood up and dismissed the students. Making way for the next class, I was pulled aside by a few male classmates to take pictures. Clarissa stood in the shade of a tree opposite with several boys eagerly wanting to take a picture with her. After a few shots, I heard Diana's laughter. I walked over. "Can I take a picture with you?" Diana readily agreed. Of course, I gave my phone to a classmate to help take the picture and stood next to Diana, making a peace sign. "Remember to send me a copy later." I smiled and nodded. "Got it. Want to take one together?" Clarissa had appeared behind me at some point, a hint of expectation in her eyes. Sure. We stood side by side, about half an arm's length apart. Because of my suspicion that she had awakened, I subconsciously turned and looked up at her, sensing my gaze. She looked at me. Our eyes met, and her expression flickered for a few seconds before she looked away. The classmate taking the picture handed me my phone. This picture turned out great. The screen had captured the exact moment we looked at each other. I added Clarissa on Facebook and sent her the photo. She held her phone, looking at it for a long time. I saw the corner of her lips curve into a smile. The next day at school, I made an excuse to go to the office to get a practice test from the teacher. I saw the dean of students drinking tea. "Hello, Dean." The dean nodded at me. I took a few steps closer. "Yesterday, our classmate Clarissa was almost bullied in the woods. It's a good thing you were there, Dean, and saved her in time. Thank you so much. Clarissa is my desk mate, and I was very worried about her." The dean angrily cursed the troublemaker, then said to me, "It's a good thing. Student Clarissa called me in advance." "She called you?" From my conversation with the dean, I got a general idea of what happened yesterday. A classmate who was on good terms with Clarissa had called her over. Clarissa sensed something was wrong with her tone, felt something was off, and called the dean first. The dean had taught her before and had even done a home visit, so he still had her number. When he mentioned the home visit, the dean sighed. I took the test and went back to the classroom, my mind processing his words. Everything was clear now. In the last life, Clarissa was betrayed by that classmate, so this time she planned ahead and turned the tables on them. She really had awakened. She remembered everything from the last life. Was the disappearance of the contenders and I.9 related to her memories? Now that she had returned with her memories, would she still disappear with the world? June, the month of the final exams. This time I didn't meet Clarissa on the bus. The weather was gloomy and rainy. On the last day of the exams, the bus I was waiting for at the station was late. It was probably due to the exam day traffic. I checked the map. There was a shortcut from here that would get me home in half an hour, but halfway through, I realized my poor sense of direction had led me the wrong way. I sighed in frustration, bought an ice cream and a few lollipops from a street vendor and turned back to the correct route. The shortcut went through an old residential area. I was looking at the map and eating my ice cream, and after a few turns, a cat's meow caught my attention. An orange cat was perched on a wall, its fur soaked by the rain. I tentatively called out, "I.9." The cat glanced at me, then jumped down and ran off. I chased after it, but the cat was gone. Instead, I saw a familiar person. A girl stood outside a wall covered in ivy, without an umbrella, the rain streaming down her face. The moment she saw me, she smiled. I walked towards her, holding my umbrella over her head. "What's wrong? Do you like standing in the rain?" She always appeared before me like this, looking pathetic and pitiful. It was unsettling. I was talking to Clarissa, but I saw her staring at me intently, her eyes gradually turning red. She moved her lips. "Alex, do you know, I've been waiting for you. I kept thinking if you didn't show up, I would give up on bothering you. But if you did show up, then maybe I could be a little greedy." I took a step back. "Clarissa, what are you talking about?" "I don't understand." Clarissa turned and hid in my arms, her dark expression tinged with a pleading demand. "Alex, don't fall for anyone else, okay?" Her hand touched my face and my eyelashes trembled. Her eyes so close were filled with sadness, love, longing, and a deep sense of missing someone. My mind flashed with countless fragmented images in an instant. It was overwhelming. The sharp pain in my head made me push Clarissa to the ground and run away. The rain kept falling. I ran forward while the girl behind me stood there, clenching her fists. Back home, when I opened my bedroom door, I saw I.9. It was sitting on my chair. "We meet again, Alex." I walked to the chair and crouched down. "The cat that led me to Clarissa was you, wasn't it?" "What?" I.9 licked its front paw. "It's a long story. Let me show you something. You'll understand after you see it." I.9 opened its mouth and coughed up a bizarre, colorful bubble. It slowly floated towards me and disappeared at my forehead. I had a dream. It was long and chaotic. The first scene was a gloomy, wet, rainy day. It was the last day of the final exams. After finishing the last subject, on a whim, I decided not to take the bus. I walked home, splashing in puddles of all sizes. I took a shortcut through an old neighborhood. In an alley, a girl was leaning against a corner of a wall covered in ivy. She had her head down, letting the rain wash over her. Motionless, I stood at the entrance of the alley with my umbrella for a few seconds. Maybe my stare was too obvious because the girl suddenly looked up at me. The face was familiar. It was my desk mate, Clarissa. I turned my head and walked forward, not approaching her. As I passed a small convenience store, I suddenly stopped. I bought an umbrella and went back to that alley. I walked up to Clarissa and crouched down, shielding her with my umbrella. The raindrops pattered on the umbrella's surface. Clarissa slowly looked up, her eyes empty. Her already pale face looked even colder and more distant under the rain. "Are you okay?" I broke the silence. She stared at me, then suddenly broke into a malicious grin. She said, "He's dead." Clarissa pointed at herself. "The biological father of this body. Did you know?" "I'm so happy." She was smiling, but tears were streaming down her face. I looked at the suppressed emotion swirling in her eyes and said, "Don't stand in the rain and ruin your health. If you get sick, seeing a doctor and getting medicine is very expensive." Maybe my comment was too out of left field because Clarissa froze. "Don't you think I'm cruel and terrifying? I don't know your family, and I don't know your true feelings. I can't judge you." I opened the other umbrella I was holding and placed it on her shoulder. Then I stood up. "There's a 24-hour convenience store up ahead. If you don't want to go home, you can go there. Don't stay out in the rain. I'm leaving." I turned my back to her and slowly walked out of the alley. The scene changed, and I saw an adult Clarissa standing in a cemetery. Her fingertips traced my photograph. A man in a black trench coat appeared behind her. "Does it hurt? Do you want to save him, to change his fate of death?" It turned out he was the transmigrator who had stolen the male lead's role. The side character he loved had died, and he believed it was his fault for altering the destiny line. He wanted Clarissa to help him. He revealed his identity as a transmigrator and the secret that Clarissa was the world's protagonist. He told Clarissa that my death was because of his interference. He had taken the male lead's identity and was always inevitably arranged by fate to meet Clarissa at specific times, too. Avoid the pull of the destiny line. He tried many methods. He even had others try to initiate the male lead's encounters with Clarissa, but they all failed. On one occasion, I accidentally took his place in an encounter with Clarissa. He discovered that only when I followed the male lead's path would he not be controlled by fate. So my numerous encounters with Clarissa afterward were all his doing. My naturally detached personality meant that my actions towards Clarissa were merely out of basic kindness. To me, they were insignificant things, but they had inadvertently made me the one who brought warmth to Clarissa. It made her develop feelings and an obsession for me. In the first world, after graduation, we occasionally exchanged letters. Half a year after Etheria was released, Clarissa asked to meet me. I agreed, but I broke my promise. The next time we met was at my funeral. The transmigrator told Clarissa that if anything happened to her, the world would collapse, God would appear and save the world. Everything could be reset and I could return to my place. Clarissa agreed. In the second and third worlds, I was still erased by the world and died. The moment I left, Clarissa would remember the memories of the previous life. The pain eroded her, multiplied. She finally understood. My death had nothing to do with the transmigrator. In this world, I was fated to not live past 27. She looked up at the sky, and after a long moment, a cruel, resolute smile appeared on her lips. The next second, the world trembled and began to disintegrate and collapse. The moment I opened my eyes, tears streamed down my face. You two have met, haven't you? I asked. I.9, my throat tight, my voice hoarse. Yes, she made a deal with God. She would stay alive and keep this world running on the condition that you must live a long, healthy life. She wants you to have a smooth, peaceful, and happy life. God agreed. In the last life, I.9 had noticed me and had been reviewing every world with the task takers, trying to find the motive for Clarissa's suicide. It discovered that in every world after I died, Clarissa would follow suit and kill herself. So, it came to find me, but it was a step too late. I.9 stood up. Hey, I led you to her and told you the truth because I want you to know what she sacrificed. I hate tragic endings. I stroked I.9's ruffled fur, crying and smiling at the same time. I.9, thank you for telling me. Clarissa's repeated suicides were for me. She bore the pain of my death over and over again. She used constant self-destruction to get a chance to talk to and bargain with God. It turned out I was the one who had been saved by her all along. On the day we got our graduation photos, I saw Clarissa. This time she was standing on the stage in the auditorium, accepting everyone's applause. When the assembly ended, I chased after her, but couldn't find her. I walked through the school building, wondering where she could be. As I was going down a flight of stairs, I met her as she was about to step onto the first step. She looked up, her dark eyes quietly watching me. I walked down the stairs one step at a time and stood in front of her. I scared you that day. I'm sorry, she said, her eyes downcast, hiding her emotions. I bit my lip, my eyes stinging. Who gave you the right to sacrifice your life for me? Clarissa's head snapped up. You know everything? I've met I.9. Her gaze on me was gentle. It has nothing to do with you. I did it willingly. How could it have nothing to do with me? I witnessed every moment of your death. The image of you smiling as you resolutely plunged into the abyss is etched into my heart. Do you know how much I regret refusing I.9's request in the last life? You make me feel like a complete jerk. I threw myself at her, hugging her tightly, burying my face in her shoulder. My tears fell onto her skin. Clarissa raised her hand and gently patted my back. Alex, don't cry. Clarissa, thank you. I didn't want to say those two words to her. They felt too light, but I realized that besides those two words, I had nothing else to give her. I had merely given her a piece of candy, and she had risked her life for me. Today is the winter solstice. The air is filled with the smell of sweet dumplings and savory dumplings. My roommates are from all over, and we're celebrating the festival together. This is my first year of college. Clarissa and I are studying in different cities. After that confession, we didn't get together. I needed some time to give her an answer. At that time, I was confused. I wasn't sure if my feelings for her were gratitude and pity or love. We kept in touch often, sending messages, mostly about the small, everyday things in our lives. Most of the time she would share her life, and I would share mine. We rarely had long, continuous conversations. It was more about sharing our lives, It was strange yet harmonious. I scooped up a white, glutinous rice ball. Just as I took a bite, my phone rang. I stared at the caller ID, my hand trembling slightly from nervousness. For the past 6 months, Clarissa and I had been texting, but we had never talked on the phone. This was the first time she had ever called me. I answered the call, my palm hot despite the cold winter day. "Hello, Alex. I'm here to see you. I'm downstairs from your dorm." I put on a cotton jacket as I was leaving. I saw a blue scarf hanging on my bedpost and snatched it. I hurried downstairs. Clarissa wearing a down jacket appeared in my line of sight. She was truly beautiful, standing out wherever she went. The weather was cold, and it had been snowing for the past few days. Her hair and shoulders were dusted with white snow. The two cities were next to each other, not too far, but it was still a 3-hour trip to get here. "Aren't you cold?" I raised my hand and brushed the snowflakes from her hair. "I'm cold." Her gaze was burning as she looked at me. "Alex, happy birthday. Today is the winter solstice, my birthday. It's also the day I promised to give her an answer. You really didn't have to come all this way. It's so cold." "It's okay. I wanted to see you." I put the scarf I was holding around her neck. A scarf that looked plain on me looked elegant on her. Her eyes were glued to my face. I coughed lightly, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Just say what you want to say. Don't look at me like that." Clarissa chuckled, her palm covering my hand. "Alex, can you only love me?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. I pulled her into my arms, and I could hear her sigh of relief in my ear. Even though we were separated by thick clothes and surrounded by cold snow, my heart was warm. I love Clarissa. The moment I saw her, the sound of my heartbeat told me the answer. She won't be alone anymore. I will be with her this time. We will both live well.